This week's blog post is the second in my series on the Clark Art Institute. For more on the Clark, see the first post in this series. This week we are looking at paintings of the later 17th century. First up, 1645 to 46, Bartolomé Esteban Murillo, Fray Julián of Alcalà's vision of the ascension of the soul of King Philip of Spain. Brother Julian of Alcalá, surrounded by fellow Franciscans, points to the distance where Philip II of Spain is being welcomed to heaven by a bevy of angels. It's a pretty attention-grabbing painting. Inquiring minds, my mind at least, want to know, why was this particular king chosen to be represented in that way? The answer is that Philip II was a hero of the Counter-Reformation, the Catholic Church's attempt to regain ground from various Protestant sects that sprung up in the late 1500s. Philip II ruled Spain 1556 to 98, Portugal 1580 to 98, and parts of the Netherlands. Beginning in 1568, he waged a brutal war on the Protestant population of Spanish-controlled Netherlands. In 1588, he sent the Spanish Armada against those damned heretics in England. In France, he sent money and troops to support those who were opposing the accession to the throne of Henry of Navarre, Protestant. And Philip's navy defeated the Ottoman Muslims at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. So, to good Catholics such as Fray Julián and Murillo, Philip II was a saint, even though he was never canonized. This painting is an early work by Murillo, whose dates are 1618 to 82. Murillo became one of the most famous Spanish artists of the Baroque period, following in the tradition of Velázquez and Zurbarán. He specialized in religious works and sentimental paintings of peasant children, which explains why I've never paid much attention to his works. But in terms of style, the way he paints rather than the subject, I do like his work. The figure at the front here is really quite lovely. I've given you links in the blog post to more about this painting. Next up, from 1646, a painting by Claude, who is known as Claude Gelée, Claude Lorraine, or simply Le Lorraine. This is Rest on the Flight to Egypt. Lorraine was one of the earliest artists to focus on landscapes. This painting is nominally about Mary, Joseph, and the infant Jesus resting on their journey from Bethlehem to Egypt. As an avid reader, I love that Joseph is just sitting off to the side reading a book. Although the figures are a small part of the painting, almost incidental, they helped Claude and his contemporaries classify such works as this one as history paintings. History painting was a much more respected genre than mere landscape painting. More on that in my book Seismic Shifts. And on the history of landscape painting and its significance, I've given you a link to my essay from 2006. Next up, from 1660. I meant to look and see how to pronounce this name, and I didn't, so I'll just try not to say it. We'll call him Jacob. Jacob, whose dates are 1629 to 82, is considered the greatest Dutch landscape painter of the 17th century. He's known for conveying mood, it's usually rather gloomy mood, in his works. This painting is typical, meticulous detail for a mundane subject. I would not go across that bridge on foot, never mind with a herd of livestock. British painters such as Gainsborough and Constable were both greatly inspired by our friend Jacob. And the final painting we'll look at this week, 1681 to 84, is by Antoine Coppel. It's called Allegory of Music. This is an early work by this artist, who came from a family of prominent artists. It's an appealing style modeled on the work of Peter Paul Rubens. This man later became court painter to Louis XV of France, curator of the Royal Art Collections, and director of the Royal Academy. Oddly enough, though, the information that caught my eye in the label for this painting was the name Charles Perrault. Back in the 2010s, while researching the history of Central Park sculptures, I read up on Mother Goose. Giving you the link to that post. Mother Goose was the creation of Charles Perrault, 1628 to 1703, who wrote 8 stories, to amuse his children and published them under the title Tales and Stories of the Past with Morals, Tales of Mother Goose. You can see the blog post for the French version of that. Among them were the stories of Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood, Bluebeard, Puss in Boots, and Cinderella. These stories became wildly popular in France and abroad. Perrault was a favorite at the court of Louis XV, the one who said, "I am the state, l'état c'est moi." And those favored by Louis were very well off indeed. For his Paris home, Perrault planned an elaborate ceiling filled with allegorical images of the arts and sciences. For such allegorical figures, the usual style was to make the faces classically beautiful and idealized. But this artist decided to make music a recognizable portrait of Louis XIV's mistress, Madame de Maintenon, although she's shown much younger than her actual age of 50. Around her are the king's children by his first wife, Queen Maria Theresa of Spain. They're utterly charming. This elaborate allegorical ceiling was never completed. Perrault had been an administrative aide to Jean-Baptiste Colbert, Louis XIV's finance minister, since 1663. But in 1682, Colbert dismissed Perrault, and Perrault stopped receiving a writer's pension. His home was razed in 1685 to make way for the Place des Victoires. Only a few of the paintings for the ceiling have survived, and we don't actually know whether any of them were ever installed. Next week, we will look at more works from the Clark. DianeDuranteWriter.com has hundreds of posts on sculpture, painting, architecture, and my other obsessions. To join the Sunday Recommendations email list, visit the URL on the screen or email me. And you can say, "Well done, Diane," or support my work and receive rewards by means of the tip jar on DianeDuranteWriter.com. As always, thank you for listening.